Here we go.
السلام عليكم دكتورة ليبيا.
مرحبا قايدة سامية.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. We are happy that you're joining us. Today's session is an opportunity for you member organizations to ask questions about the motions, to understand them. It's a chance to hear and understand the positions of different member organizations and to refine our thinking in advance of the World Conference. To begin the session, I am Cindy Ann Alexander, and I'm from Grenada, a member of the World Board and also Western Hemisphere Regional Chair. You would notice on the screen some information on how to select your languages, how to ensure that you're able to hear the content of today's meeting. So if you take a chance to look on screen and make any adjustments so that you are able to hear and understand what is happening. So as I said, today is a time for asking questions, for discussion. And we really hope that we would take this opportunity, since during the week of World Conference, time will be limited to the sessions that are planned. And so we are giving you this opportunity to really take the time to ask the questions and have a discussion on these motions. Today's session, it is on Zoom, and I know many of you are familiar with how to use Zoom, but I just want to let you know that while the structure of today's session will be very similar to what's happening in World Conference, during World Conference week, we will actually be using a different online platform, and you would have heard about that and been given access to some parts of that already. So I invite you to become familiar after today's session. So these sessions, as we have them and you have been invited to them, are not formal World Conference sessions. And as I said, it will follow the similar format. So I'm just going to explain to you a little bit how the session is organized and the timings. So throughout today, the World Board will first present a motion, and that will take at maximum 3 minutes. And if applicable, I will then invite an MO who would have proposed an amendment to speak on the amendment to that motion. The member organization will also have 3 minutes to speak. After that, the floor will be opened to all member organizations to ask questions or make comments. If you are a member wishing or a delegate wishing to speak, to be able to do that, you should request the ability to speak via the chat. There in the chat, you will place your name and your member organization and which language you would like to speak in. You can write in the chat in your language. When a member organization is then invited to speak or to ask your question or make your comments, you will have 3 minutes each to speak. At the end of the 3 minutes, a sound will alert you that the 3 minutes have ended. What we will do is collect a few questions at a time. So if you indicate in the chat, we will then collect the names of persons wishing to speak. We will then hear the questions collected in a group and then respond. Today, we ask that you use the chat primarily for requests to speak and not for general comments or social comments. So when you're using the chat, we ask that you use the chat to request to speak on a motion. So at this time, I just want to say again, thank you to everyone for joining. And again, I would remind you, because we had some persons joining while I was speaking, of how to ensure that you're able to hear in your language. You should look in the Zoom control for a globe, a circle icon, select it, and then select the language that you would be preferring to listen and speak in. When you are speaking, as persons who have been invited to speak, we ask that you speak slowly and clearly to help the interpretation team to be able to represent your thoughts efficiently. So at this time, I'd just like to invite another member of the World Board, Zine, to present to you motion number 1, which is about the reduction of the size of the World Board. Zine.
Constitutional motion number 1, reducing the size of the World Board. This motion proposes to reduce the maximum number of World Board members from 17 to 11. This transition will happen over 2 triennia. The purpose of having a smaller board is that it allows for more effective discussion and decision-making. The World Board is elected by member organizations to provide strategic direction and oversight for WEGs. In recent years, the World Board has been implementing ways to increase its effectiveness, including regular skills audits and annual World Board evaluations. In 2019, the World Board established a governance design team to look at further measures. Working closely with the World Board Governance Committee, and after a careful review of international best practices in the governance arena, the governance design team concluded that a small board would provide more effective governance and proposed 11 elected members. This corresponds to a trend towards smaller charity and corporate boards across the world, including international membership organizations like WEGs. With the World Conference postponed in 2020 due to the global pandemic, 6 World Board members had to step down at the end of their term of office. It is now a full year that the World Board has been operating with 11 elected members. The experience of the World Board is that it has been able to be more agile in responding to the needs of the organization and the movement, despite the considerable challenges presented by COVID-19. The smaller size has also been more conducive to deeper discussions, greater levels of participation and collaboration, and more effective decision-making. We have received feedback or questions from a small number of member organizations asking whether a small World Board would find it difficult because of workload issues on its ability to cover the skill sets required or be sufficiently representative. We would like to specifically address the points raised. In terms of workload, our experience shows that the size of the World Board is not the key issue. What is important is to make sure that the board focuses on strategic governance and to make sure that tasks are appropriately allocated to board committees and then brought to the full board for discussion and decision-making. In a World Board of 11 elected members, including 5 regional chairs, it should be possible to have strong skills, expertise, and experience, as well as the diversity of perspective that is the strength of our movement. We recommend this proposal, a reduction from 17 to 11 elected World Board members for a more agile, responsive, and effective World Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Zine. We received a proposed amendment from our member organization from Lebanon. So at this time, if a representative from Lebanon wishes to speak, about this proposed amendment, you are invited to speak. Please be reminded that the maximum amount of minutes to speak at this time is 3 minutes.
لبنان كان عم يقترح مساء الخير للجميع، وأنا سعيدة إني أكون معكم اليوم لحتى أعبر لحتى أعبر عن الفكرة يلي لبنان حب إنه يطرحها. اقترح لبنان إنه يكون في 9 أعضاء، يعني العدد أعلى من 6 ل 9، لأنه لما يكون في 9 بنكون منعطي نحن فرصة لما ينضغط على الأعضاء يلي هن متطوعين، ونوزع المهام يلي نحن شايفينها إنها كتير كبيرة على عاتق الهيئة الورد بورد، يعني اللجنة العالمية. هيك بتتوزع، ونكون نحن قادرين يكون عنا أشخاص فعالين أكثر وبيقدروا يملوا كل المهام يلي موجودة يلي مطروحة على الجمعية العالمية، ويكون في تنوع، وبيكون نحن عنا فرصة ليكون في تنوع أكثر، وليكون في فئات كمان فئات عمرية أكثر. وهذا كان مقترح لبنان، إنه يكون العدد 9 زائد 5، مش 6 زائد 5. اوكي، هذا يلي حبينا نحن نقوله من لبنان. اوكي، هذا اللي حبينا نقوله من لبنان ونشرحه.
Thank you, Lebanon. I will now open the discussion and invite you, member organizations who have expressed an interest to speak. I also want to remind everyone that we would like to use the chat today primarily as a request to speak and not for general or social comments. That way we will not miss any member organization's requests to speak. So if you would like to speak on this motion, I just would like to remind you to indicate in the chat that you would like to speak. You will indicate your name, your member organization, and the language that you will be speaking in. So I see now there is one request to speak. So I now invite Maria.
Hello. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just would like to say something that, you know, this has been a very unusual year, as we all know. And also, basing such a big change on the basis of just 1 year seems doesn't seem quite wise to me, because it could also be the fact that sometimes in a group is very homogeneous and they understand each other very well. So, and being able to react better and do a better governance could be due to this particular group and this particular year. So a big change like this, you know, a practice that has been going on successfully for years, a change to this practice should not be based on the experience of 1 year only. This is what I'd like to say. So I think we should wait and perhaps experiment other ways and you know, see for some more years before suggesting this change. Also, as you know, the WAGS represents such a diverse group, you know, 150 countries over 5 regions. And within every region, there's so much diversity. So the regional chair also does not always represent the entire region in its, you know, difficulties and culture and everything. So I think if we reduce the number, we will reduce the number of people, you know, who are able to represent and take part in decision making, and we will affect the diversity of our group. Thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, Pakistan. We will now invite Charlotte from the UK to speak.
Hello. Hello all. Very nice to see you on video. I'm Charlotte from Girl Guiding UK. I have a very short question for the Lebanon. Thank you very much for your amendment. How do you propose they will be elected as a board of 9? Do you propose that would be 4 members elected 1 triennium, followed by 5 the following triennium? I just wanted a bit of clarification for the amendment. Thank you.
بالنسبة للانتخابات كنا عم نقول إنه بيقدر يكون 4 و5 حسب كيف بيصير التوافق على النظام، يعني كيف بده يصير التوافق على النظام. وحتى كمان فينا وفينا نعملها بهاي الطريقة لأنه بيصير في مداولة، وفينا نعمل يعني الأعداد 3-3-3، يعني فينا نعمل 3-3-3 وفينا نعمل 5 و4 حسب ما بيرتقي بعدين النظام المداورة. لأنه نحن لقينا إنه العدد 6 كتير قليل. إذا بدهم يتداولوا بالانتخابات 3-3، يعني 3 يلي عم يتغيروا بال6 من 11 بيكونوا كتير قليل، يعني ما في استمرارية بالأفكار يلي عم تصير. مشان هيك ال9 بيكون في أكثر أشخاص عم يضلوا وأكثر أشخاص عم يكونوا موجودين ليتابعوا الأفكار والقرارات يلي أخذها المجلس العالمي.
شكرا. Thank you.
Thank you, member from the UK. And now we'll invite Eri from Greece.
Yes, hello. I am Eri, representing the Greek Guiding Association. Thank you very much for this proposal and also the Lebanon for the amendment. I would like to ask the World Board if they have thought about this amendment and if at this point they feel strong that this amendment will help the situation, or if the World Board feels that it is better to go to the 6 and 5 instead of 9 or 5. This is my question for the World Board. Thank you.
Thank you from the association from Greece. We now have a question from Norway.
Hi all, great to see you. I would just like to say that the Guides and Scouts of Norway would like to remind the World Conference, or us here today, that the UK Charity Commission advised that both boards should not consist of more than 12 trustees. And as well, this last year, the board have had the opportunity to try to be less people and still want to forward this motion. So I think they have a good experience and a good feeling that this is workable. And as well, we think that too many trustees could be insufficient and maybe carry a bit of dead weight, if you can say it like that. And a smaller board consisting of engaged trustees make for more dynamic discussions, and the responsibility of electing a diverse board are up to us, the people electing them. And as well, the board is not, we feel like the board is not to show the diversity or in that way represent one country or one culture, but is to see the entire organization as one, and that's their job. So if they're 9 or 6, that wouldn't differ because they're always supposed to see the entire organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. I will now invite Palestine. Okay, so I'm just gonna give one more call to Palestine. All right, so I'm just gonna move on now because we have grouped the question as we advised in the at the beginning. So just gonna repeat that. The process today is that we receive all the questions, we group the questions, and then we respond. And so I would now like to invite a member of the World Board to respond to those questions.
Can I respond, Cindy Ann?
Yes, Zine?
Thank you so much. I would like to respond to the question that said that this proposal should not be based on 1 year's experience due to the pandemic. And my response to that is, this proposal is not based on the 1 year since the pandemic. It has been well researched. It is best practice. And it has been said very well that the board is not meant to be representative of everybody. The board is not meant to accommodate all the diverse groups within the association. The board is meant to be an agile, strategic team that works with committees, and the major work is done in committees because the board is mainly there for decision-making, for governance, and work is done in committees. Because of the pandemic then, the board had an opportunity to test what the board would have brought forward even before the pandemic, because of best practice, because of research that has been made, and that is the direction other charity organizations are moving towards. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Zine. Just want to say thank you very much to everyone for your contributions and your questions, your observations. And I'd like to bring the discussion on motion 1 to a close. So we'll now move on to discuss motion number 4, proposed motion number 4. And this motion speaks to the provision to co-opt an additional World Board member. I'd like to invite World Board member Tasha to present this motion.
Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here to speak to you today. This motion proposes to enable the World Board to co-opt one additional board member if they identify a significant gap in the board's skills and/or expertise. The World Board is elected by member organizations to provide strategic direction and oversight for WAGs. To fulfill this role, the World Board needs a wide variety of skills and expertise, including strategic vision and oversight, financial and risk management, marketing, fundraising and communications, advocacy, and human resource management. In any board, it is difficult to ensure all of these skills are present on the board. It is for this reason that many organizations allow for co-option of 1 or 2 additional board members. We have received feedback from a small number of member organizations asking for additional information about how the World Board would manage the selection process and voting rights for a co-opted board member. We would like to specifically address the points raised. In the event that the World Board identifies the need to co-opt a board member, it will launch an open call for candidates and will conduct a fair and transparent recruitment process. Regarding voting rights for a co-opted board member, this matter is governed by charitable law. It is essential that all board members, including a co-opted board member, have the right to vote. Without voting rights, a co-opted board member can speak in a board meeting, and without voting rights, a co-opted board member cannot speak in board meetings and influence decision-making. Sorry, I got that wrong. Without voting rights, a co-opted board member can still speak in board meetings and influence decision-making, but they do not have the same level of accountability and responsibility as voting members of the board, and therefore would not be able to fulfill their charity law duties and responsibilities as a trustee. This means that a co-opted World Board member must have a vote. In closing, then, this motion is to enable the World Board to co-opt one additional board member if they identify a significant gap in skills and/or expertise. This is to ensure that the World Board has all the information, skills, and expertise necessary to effectively govern WAGs and serve the movement. Cindy Ann, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Tasha. At this point, I'm opening the discussion on this motion, and I would like to invite member organizations to request to speak via the chat. I just want to make another reminder that the chat feature, we would really like that you use the chat as a space to request to speak and not for general or social comments. To request to speak, as a reminder, you would indicate your name, your member organization, and the language you're going to speak. So please indicate those in the chat. We will be acknowledging the persons who request to speak in the chat. However, if we have much comments coming in, it tends to sometimes prevent us the list. Okay. We have two requests to speak at this time. I would now like to invite Shriluk to speak, followed by a representative from Lebanon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charlotte. I'm from Cambodia. Yeah, I have a question. Like, if I don't listen, it's wrong. The 12 co-op world board will have different, like, cannot make the decisions like the other 11 world board members, right? So I wonder how the voting process would look like. You get what I mean?
Thank you. We have recorded your question. Thank you. We now invite Lebanon.
أنا بشكركم مرة ثانية على أنه أعطيتوني فرصة التعبير. نحن عم نختار شخص كفؤ لأنه نحن عنا ثغرة معينة بالمجلس العالمي. الهدف إنه هذا الشخص يجي ويعطينا الخبرة تبعيته ويعطينا العلم تبعه ليساعدنا لنوصل لأهدافنا. لما نحن بدنا نعطيه حق التصويت، هذا الشخص عم يمثل الصوت المجموعة يلي هو المجلس العالمي، يعني ال 11 أو 17 شخص. أما أي شخص موجود بالمجلس العالمي هو بيعكس أصوات العالم، يعني اتفق العالم كله كل الجمعيات على أنه هو بيقدر ياخد هاي المهمة ويدلي بصوته. نحن بنخاف أنه يساء فهم هالفقرة بالذات وتصير بالمستقبل وكأنه نحن عم نعين شخص ليكون بالمجلس ويكون له حق التصويت. يعني نحن بنتمنى انه الخبره كثير مهمه ويمكن يحصل انه يكون في ثغرات بالامور، فينا نستعين باشخاص يجوا ويعطونا خبرتهم ويساعدونا بس بدون ما يكون عندهم صوت. لانه كمان اللجان نحن بتساعدنا كثير، كل اللجان اللي بتشتغل على الصعيد العالمي بس ما لهم اصوات جوا. وانا بشكركم.
Thank you, Lebanon. We'll now go to Belgium, followed by the Netherlands. Belgium. I see that you are attempting to speak, but we're not hearing you.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you for this proposed motion. We were very happy to see in the election booklet that you had an analysis of your competencies, of the current verbal competencies. And my remark is rather, if you have such knowledge of your competencies, if you can go and search for a specific profile in your request to the MOs instead of or beside of this disposition. I found okay to ask specific people to be elected or to know they are useful to the World Board and they can provide the expertise that is currently missing. It was rather a remark than a question. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Belgium. Now, Netherlands.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm from the Netherlands, and we support that the board should have enough skills to be able to fulfill their tasks. However, we do have a couple of concerns about the role of the World Board during the open call selection and decision-making process. And we were wondering if there is a possibility to have some neutral party involved in one of these steps of having the decision of an extra board member within the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Lebanon. Sorry, thank you, Netherlands. So at this time, I will like to invite Tasha to respond to the questions received.
Thank you, everybody, for those questions. I'll take them one at a time. So I think the representative from Cambodia, you were interested in understanding what the voting process would look like, or what the process would look like to co-opt a new board member if we decided to go in that direction. I think that process is still something that we need to work through, but the idea would be that it would be very open and transparent, and that we would go out to the MOs similarly to the process that we use for the election of committee members or for the appointment of committee members, and get candidates from the MOs so that the board would then have a broad slate of individuals to choose from. The second question was about voting rights. I think the real question here, and the issue the governance design team and the World Board wanted to address, is to ensure that the World Board always has the skills and expertise it needs to effectively govern WAGs for the benefit of the whole movement. The World Board would only consider co-opting an additional board member, and one only, if there was a particular gap in skills or expertise. As I had said, the person would be selected by the World Board, an elected body, through an open and transparent process. And since there can be only one co-opted board member, the overwhelming majority of the board, that is 11 out of the 12, would be those elected at a world conference or a regional conference. The representative from Belgium, I would say to you that our current process for identifying candidates for the World Board is to identify a skills matrix, the roles that we feel are important, the gaps that we have in our skill set, and we're very transparent about putting those out. And we are hopeful that candidates that ultimately get elected to the World Board will have those gaps, will help us fill those gaps and have those skills and competencies that we need. However, as you know, the World Board doesn't control who gets elected to the World Board. It is the member organizations. So again, our preference would always be that we get an elected board that has all the skills and competencies that we need. The co-opt process would only be if we have a gap. And then for the Netherlands, we will take that comment back to the design team and certainly consider your comment as we look at the preparation of the process going forward. And Deanne, I think that's all the questions, so I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Tasha. I just want to take a note here at this time, just to let persons know that we have gone through and identified persons indicating the request to speak for motion 1 that we missed in the chat. And so we will be going back to those questions at the end of the first part of this event. We have one more request to speak. Norway.
Hello, everybody. Scouts and Guides of Norway would like to ask World Board about why do you think you need another member instead of external advisor in that particular tasks you are you don't have skills or yeah.
Thank you, Norway. We did consider that option. However, we do feel that it's important that when we're looking at the skills and the experience of working with the board, that the entire board be in a position to be able to provide a vote and be able to provide that insight on the voting side of things. So the idea is that we want to make sure that the individual who comes forward and who joins the board actually has the ability to participate fully and to have a vote at the end of the day on the motions that we are proposing and the things that we are considering as a board. Hence the reason why we chose not to necessarily go with an advisor route.
Thank you, Tasha. At this time, I would like to close discussions on motion number 4. Thank you very much, everyone, for your contribution to the discussion on this motion. We now move on to motion number 6. Proposed motion number 6 addresses vice chairs and regional committee members. I would like to invite Katarina to present the proposed motion 6.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to have you here and see you on screen. Thank you for joining this session. So motion number 6 proposes to correct an error in clause 21.4 of the Constitution. Clause 21.4 gives voting rights to a regional vice chair or any other member of the regional committee who attends a World Board meeting in the absence of the regional chair. As it currently stands, this provision does not comply with UK charity law. World Board members have legal responsibility for strategic direction and oversight of WACS. Can you please mute yourselves? Thank you. So World Board members have legal responsibility for strategic direction and oversight of WACS. As a matter of law, they cannot delegate their overall decision-making power. This means that it is not possible for a regional chair to pass voting rights to their vice chair or any other member of the regional committee. We recommend this constitutional motion to you, and this will mean that the regional vice chair or another member of the regional committee will still be able to attend World Board meetings. The regional chair is unable to attend, but without the right to vote. Indian, back to you.
Thank you, Katerina. We received a proposed amendment to this motion, and we would like to invite a representative from Germany to discuss the amendment. Be reminded that we have a maximum of 3 minutes to present the amendment.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say something to our amendment. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we from the German Guide and Scout Federation did the amendment since we understand that our constitution has to comply with the UK charity law and therefore support the change of the constitution regarding the voting rights. But just to make sure that the regional committees are represented at the World Board's meeting, we suggest changing the wording and yeah, change may to shall to therefore have a stronger commitment into inviting the regional vice chair or another member of the regional committee in case of the absence of the regional chair. Yeah, that's from our side. Thank you.
Thank you to the representative from Germany. I would now open the discussion, inviting participants to request to speak via the chat. Quick reminder, to request to speak, you will indicate your name, your member organization, and the language with which you would speak. I also remind all participants that the purpose of the chat in this meeting is to receive requests to speak, and we advise that it's not for general or social comments. So to request to speak, indicate your name, your member organization, and the language. I would now like to invite the representative from Jordan to ask your question. Okay, so that may have been an error. A reminder, please indicate your request to speak in the chat, indicating your name, your member organization, and the language. You can, in the chat, type in the language that you prefer. I now invite Uganda.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving me the opportunity. I would like to thank everyone for the proposed motion 6. That is the vice chairs and regional committee members to participate in the board meetings. I would like to acknowledge and pledge my full support for this proposal, that it is very important always for vice chairs and regional committee members to take part in the board meetings, because there are so many scenarios where
by the chairpersons or the regional committee members may not be available, but at least whenever there are meetings, the representations must be there so that issues that are discussed at board level can be brought back to the respective region by the vice chairs. I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Uganda. We invite anyone else who is wishing to speak on this motion to indicate.
Can I just, since we're waiting, maybe some people are still thinking of asking their question, to clarify that already this is happening, that when a regional chair is not able to attend, we do bring in the vice chair of the region or another member to join a World Board meeting. And this has been happening. They bring in the perspective. But as you know, regional chairs do not represent the region. They're a board member, same as everyone else. And the member substituting them does not have voting rights as it stands. So we have been complying, just to make sure about that.
Thank you, Katarina.
I think there is
we have one more question.
If we don't have any questions, we can.
Hello?
No,
sorry. Katarina, I think you have a bit of a delay. So thank you very much for your further explanation, Katarina. I would like to invite Nora, Lebanon, to speak.
شكرا لإتاحة الفرصة لإلي مرة تانية إني أحكي. ونحن مع إنه يكون يجب بدل يجوز، لأنه هيدا بيمثل صوت الإقليم وصوت أحد يعني موجود بالإقليم بالمجلس العالمي. بس يلي نحن هون من نطرح السؤال يمكن للمقاربة بالأفكار، إنه هذا شخص يلي هو منتخب من إقليمه ويلي هو عضو منتخب من إقليم ما له حق يصوت، لبينما نحن عم نجيب مستشار ونحطه من برا ونعطيه الصوت. يعني نحن يعني كنا بنتمنى إنه يقدر يصوت، يكون له حق التصويت. أما الفكرة إنه يجب أن يكون شخص بدل يجوز، هي نحن بنأيدها، فعلا بنأيدها.
Thank you, Lebanon. We have a question from Peru. All right. So I would just like to, at this point, thank Thank you for your questions and invite Katerina to read.
Thank you, Nora, for your comment. Again, I think we need to clarify that UK charitable law does not allow for any World Board member to pass on their voting rights. And remember that we are all regional chairs, including World Board members that have been elected from World Conference. They have the same status, the same as anyone else. We can never pass on our voting rights to someone else. Exceptionally for regional chairs, because they do bring the perspective of the region. And I want to stress out that they do not represent the region to the World Board. They bring us this perspective. So this is why we allow for the vice chair of the region or any other member to substitute the regional chair and bring in this perspective, participate in the conversation. But at the end, they will not have the rights to vote, same as we cannot pass on voting rights as World Board members. This is very clear in UK charitable law, and we want to make this amendment so that we are compliant. And one more comment, because Nora mentioned about motion 4 and the voting rights that we propose to give to someone who hasn't been elected. Again, you can see that if this motion passes, we will have someone participating in the board, same as World Board members, and having the same rights. So it's about using the same status and having the same rights for everyone that is participating in the conversation and is bringing the contributions forward. So it's a different situation. If we pass on this motion, we can have a person representing that skill sets and being part of the World Board as an equal board member. And that's how we are allowed by the law to do this. And if MOs pass this motion forward, we will have an extra member that will be appointed.
Thank you, Katerina. Thank you, Katerina. Any other questions on motion 6? If you do have a question, we invite you in the chat by indicating your name, your member organization, and the language that you're going to speak in. We would like to acknowledge again a request from Peru to speak. Peru. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions to the discussion on motion 6. I would like to bring the discussion on this motion to a close. We do recognize that for motion 1, there were some requests that were lost in the chat. And so we will be at this point addressing the those questions. So we're gonna invite member organizations who did indicate their request to speak to ask their questions at this point on motion number 1. So let me just clarify that. We have closed the discussion on motion 6, but we are reopening motion 1 because we would have missed requests to speak within the time. And so we would like to give these member organizations the opportunity to ask their question. So we would first call on Kuwait, and then we will call on Bahrain. So we would like to invite Kuwait to speak on motion number 1. That is the motion which addresses the proposed motion on the reduction of the size of the board. Kuwait.
مرحبا، يعطيكم العافية. بالنسبة لتقليص العدد بالمجلس العالمي، حسب ما يرى المجلس العالمي، احنا مختارينهم، وهو يودي المجلس العالمي في اختياره لناس يكونون ذوات كفاءة وخبرة ومقدرة ومعروفين على مستوى العالم. فأنا اللي عندي الملاحظة، لماذا نريد أن نزيد عدد واحد لتقليص العدد؟ احنا قاعدين نقلص ونزيد. فإذا كان اللي بنزيده يكون مستشار مثل ما هو، تستفيدوا منه في وقت الحاجات، وقت الأزمات، وقت البرامج، لكن ما نزيد نحطه كعضو يكون فعال داخل المجلس وإلى حق التصويت والانتخاب. ما يصير، لأن ما يكون هو نفس اللي تم اختيارهم الستة اللي قلصناهم. وشكرا.
Thank you, Kuwait. And I now invite Bahrain.
I would like to ask, won't reducing the size of the world board members from 17 to 11 affect?
Molly, are you
Yes.
the representative from Bahrain?
Okay.
Hello? Yes, so Molly, at this time, we are entertaining the question from the representative from Bahrain so that we don't have two persons speaking at the same time. So I now invite the representative from Bahrain to continue to speak.
Abir from Bahrain, can you please repeat?
الو مرحبا، صوتي مسموع؟
Yes.
مرحبا. طبعا لكم جميعا كل الشكر والتقدير اليوم على هذه الجلسة الرائعة وأكثر من رائعة حقيقة، والأمور اتضحت لنا جميعا. وبالعكس هذه خطوة جميلة من المجلس العالمي، طبعا بقيادة الأخت أنا سيغال والأخت هايدي، وصراحة ورئيسة الإقليم العربي، لك كل الشكر والتقدير أستاذة ليبيا والأخت شيماء. طبعا أنا ما عندي استفسار، الأمور واضحة الحمد لله. حبيت بس أن أتقدم لكم بالشكر الصراحة، لأن فعلا اليوم إحنا قعدنا مع بعضنا كأخوات من جميع الأقاليم وبرئاستكم أستاذة أنا وأستاذة هايدي، ويعني حقيقة وضحت لنا الأمور، وبالعكس يعني الأمور واضحة، وش لكم جزيل الشكر والتقدير. فإن شاء الله إحنا معاكم في المؤتمر، وتحياتي وبارك لكم مقدما على نجاح المؤتمر إن شاء الله 37، والله يوفقكم، وإن شاء الله الوجوه تتكرر لها الفرصة، إتاحة الفرصة أنهم يكونون أيضا أعضاء مرة ثانية. وشكرا لكم جزيلا على هذه الإتاحة وعلى هذه الفرصة، وإحنا مستمتعين معاكم. لو إن إحنا ما نتكلم نكون مستمتعين بالآراء واللي نسمعها، وآراء أخت نورة كانت جميلة، فلكم كل الشكر والتقدير.
Thank you, Bahrain. I will now like to invite Uganda to speak.
I just had a small concern that reducing the size of the world board from 17 to 11, won't it affect the governance and operations of the World Association of Girl Guide Movement?
Thank you for your question, Uganda. I will now like to invite a response. So we will have two persons responding because we had two topics raised. So we have Katarina who would respond to one of the questions, and we will invite Nicola to respond to the other. So Katarina.
I think one thing is to see each motion separately, and of course, in conjunction at the end, we will continue. So about the co-opting and the size of the board, it's important to know that co-opting, the motion 4, is about addressing any skills gap that we might have at the board. We did have a case of skills gaps happen, and this motion allows us for the room to bring someone in with voting rights to be able to address that and fully function and serve WAGs. So that is a separate issue of the reducing the size of the board. About the reduction, I think we had different issues of the size. We need to clarify that this motion did not come up as a result of the pandemic of COVID-19. We had this before. What's happened in the last year is that we had a chance to taste it and try it out, which we were happy to see that this last year we could function quite well. We had all the advantages that we were expecting of being faster, engaging in deeper discussions. And we have, as you know, brought in a person that is supporting the board, Fiona, with her financial skills. She does not have voting rights as is now, and this is how we have identified these needs. So the motions were pre-existing because we knew this is where the world is heading. We are following trends of international NGOs who are reducing the size, and this makes it faster and more able to serve. At the same time, we are guaranteeing that we have the skill set that we need to be going forward.
Thank you, Katarina.
Yeah, back to you. I think someone else is replying the last question.
Thank you, Katarina. We have, so I know I indicated that we would address one of the questions by Nicola. So I will invite Nicola to speak at this point, and then we will take the next question that's indicated in the chat.
Thank you, Cindy Ann. So I've been asked to respond to one of the questions that was raised earlier by Charlotte from the UK about how the voting would work if the board was at a total of 9 elected trustees and the 5 regional chairs as proposed by our colleagues in Lebanon. That would make the process a little bit more complicated. So in the motions document, we have outlined the transition provisions for moving to a board of 6 elected trustees plus 5 regional chairs, which would gradually happen over 2 triennia. So in 2023, we would gradually reduce to 14 and then gradually reduce down to 11 from 2026. You rightly state that if we were to have 9, that would mean either splitting 4 board members or 5 board members being elected in each World Conference cycle, which may provide some challenges in terms of transition arrangements, but also in terms of clarity around the process. So we would need to look at how transition would work if we were to go to a board of 9 elected trustees plus 5 regional chairs.
Thank you, Nicola. I would now like to invite Argentina to speak.
Hola, buenas tardes a todas. Me quedé reflexionando en algo que dijo Molly sobre cómo iba a funcionar esta dinámica con menos miembros, y también me quedé reflexionando en algo que dijo Caterina sobre cómo pasó de hecho algo que ya estaba pensado previamente y que se tuvo que aplicar inesperadamente de forma práctica. Me parece que también en relación con esta moción que habla de la reducción, es también muy importante que las organizaciones miembros veamos y leamos y analicemos y tengamos en consideración en los votos que decidamos finalmente durante la conferencia, las otras dos mociones vinculadas con la flexibilidad en poder mantenerse en los mandatos en caso de que la conferencia no se pueda llevar a cabo por alguna razón que hemos visto que puede llegar a suceder, y por otro lado esta disposición de incluir una persona adicional adentro del Consejo en caso de que las habilidades y experiencias no terminen de hacer un Consejo Mundial lo suficientemente completo y que se requiera esta necesidad de una habilidad o capacidad especial. Me parece que si bien son elementos que han ido llegando en diferentes momentos, me parece que es bueno considerarlos sin pensarlos como en un conjunto de cómo le vamos a brindar al Consejo Mundial la capacidad de funcionar operativamente y de una manera que las circunstancias también lo permita, considerando que quizás por un tiempo las reuniones de forma presencial también no sean posibles.
Thank you for your comments, Candela. I would just quickly check that we have noted all the questions which came in, and I believe we have one more comment to respond, and I will invite Zine.
Thank you, Cindy Ann. The question I was going to respond to, I think the comment from Argentina is helping a lot about reducing the number of the World Board. Our preference really as the board is 11. And about adding, reducing, it is to make the board more agile, and the board will then be able to concentrate on strategic issues and governance. And it does help if we reduce the board, and also to be able to co-opt is allowing the board, when there is a skill shortage that has been identified, to be able to attend to adding that skill shortage. Even if the board would have remained at 17, there probably will still be a skill shortage that needs to be plugged in. So the reduction is to really make the board agile. As we have mentioned, that with testing, it has operated so well. All the board members are able to be engaged. There is robust discussion, and every voice is able to be heard. When you have 17 in a meeting, it is not possible to allow a free flow of discussion that every voice in the board meeting can be held. But now with this year of testing it, it has worked very, very well. This is why the preference from the board is 11. Thank you, Cindy Ann.
Thank you, Zine. Thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions during part one of our session today. We have had a time to think about the motions before the World Conference. and to express our thoughts and have a healthy discussion for clarification in advance of World Conference. If you have further questions on any of the three motions that we discussed at this time, you can submit a question or comment to the World Board. You can ask the question to the World Board member who's presented or in general. And to do so, you would send an email to askyourboard@wags.org. So send in any further questions or comments to askyourboard@wags.org. You can see the email address on screen. We will now have a break. Give you a moment to refresh, to think a little bit more on what we discussed earlier and to prepare for discussion on the other motions that are proposed. The next session or the next part of this session will begin at 1 p.m. UTC. So the next part of the session will begin at 1 p.m. UTC. So we invite you to return or just pause and rejoin. If you do leave the meeting and need to rejoin the meeting, the Zoom information is the same. So you still would use the same Zoom information to rejoin the meeting. So thank you again, everyone, and I look forward to the next half of the session with you when we will be discussing the other motions.
দেখো সাবধান, অনেক ভিড়।
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am Katerina Vorogianni, a member of the World Board, and I will be one of the 2 vice chairs at the World Conference. In case any of you have missed the first part of the session, just a reminder of the purpose of these sessions. We see this as an opportunity for member organizations to ask any questions, to understand better the motions, but also to exchange ideas, to hear and understand the positions of other MOs, and thus prepare their thinking in advance of the World Conference. These sessions are now taking place in Zoom, but as you know, during World Conference Week, we will be using a different platform, which you already have started receiving details and access to, so we'll have a better experience. The session is organized so that we can start every motion. The board will present it at maximum 3 minutes. And if there is an amendment by an MO, we will ask that MO to speak also for 3 minutes and support their thinking. Then we will open the floor to any other member organization who wishes to make a statement or ask a question at any of the 4 WAGS languages. This will happen by using the chat. There you can state your name and the name of your member organization. And again, you will have the maximum of 3 minutes to address and make your comment or question. Please remember to use the chat only if you have a question to raise, so for this purpose, so that we do not miss any member organization who wishes to speak. I understand the need for social exchange and to say hello to all our colleagues, our sisters in guiding and scouting. However, there is no opportunity in this platform to do so. During World Conference, we will have more social opportunities for this. You have the bottom, at the bottom you have the interpretation, so you can select your preferred language and unmute the original language to hear better. Please use that. And I remind anyone who wishes to speak slowly and clearly for our amazing team of interpretation, so that we can all follow and be able to be part of the conversation. I will now ask Bron to present motion number 5 on provision for remote participation in a World Conference. Bron, over to you.
This motion proposes an amendment to the Constitution to allow virtual general meetings, which includes world conferences. The purpose of this motion is to allow the movement to hold governance meetings where circumstances make it difficult or impossible to hold in-person meetings. The global pandemic has shown us how important this is. This motion was already considered at the general meeting in December 2020, but did not pass. We are bringing this motion to member organisations again because the movement needs to have a mechanism in place to hold virtual meetings where in-person meetings are not possible. We are legally able to hold this 37th World Conference on the basis of UK emergency legislation linked to COVID-19 and related to Charity Commission guidance. This will not be possible in the future, so we need to give ourselves the tools now for virtual meetings in exceptional circumstances. When we proposed this motion to member organisations last year, our intention was that it would only be used in exceptional circumstances. However, although this was the intention, there were concerns that the language was too broad and might lead to online world conferences as a matter of course. We want to reassure member organisations that this was not and is not the intention of this motion. This World Conference is taking place virtually out of necessity because of COVID-19, but the board intends for the 38th World Conference in 2023 to revert back to a physical meeting. World Conference is a unique opportunity for member organisations to come together, to share experiences and best practices, discuss issues of importance to the movement,
and decide on future direction and strategy. As a group of member organisations has proposed helpful additional language to this motion, to make it clear and explicit that remote attendance shall only be considered in exceptional circumstances. The World Board welcomes and supports this amendment. In closing then, this proposal establishes the possibility of virtual general meetings where circumstances prevent in-person meetings.
Thank you, Bron. I will now invite Switzerland if they speak.
It seems like Katerina has paused. She was asking that Switzerland, who proposed the amendment to this motion, now has the opportunity to speak.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Oliver and I speak instead of our International Commissioner for Mouvement Scout Suisse, Camille, which is at the work but sends you the warmest greetings. We are thankful for the collaboration on this amendment with the member organizations of Germany, France, Estonia, Belgium and Georgia. Also, the procedural team has supported us in finding the right form and words. Therefore, thank you very much. We are thanking the World Board for recognizing the concerns expressed by some member organizations at the general meeting in December 2020 regarding the possibility to allow remote participation without any condition in place. We fully agree with their intent to enable WEX to be more agile in uncertain times, and we really appreciate both their commitment to not establish a remote participation automatism and their wish to go back to physical meetings as soon as possible. With this amendment, we only wish to specify in the Constitution that participation remotely to a World Conference or other general meeting should remain extraordinary, because the rationale where the board explains the intention is no part of the constitutional changes, we risk losing the history and the intent of this change. With including the extraordinary aspect of remote participation in the Constitution, we still allow WEX to make arrangements for enabling those in specific circumstances to attend the conference while ensuring that the original ID of this provision remains present. We understand that some MOs are unable to participate in person at World Conferences or other decision-making meetings for different reasons, one of them being very often financial reasons. We are convinced that this specific aspect has to be tackled. Indeed, we believe that remote participation is not the only solution to address the financial barrier, and we deem it necessary and urgent to open a broader discussion about ways to address the financial barriers. We believe that participation is more than attending the sessions and voting.
Interrupting you.
Sorry?
I will allow you to continue. Sorry for interrupting you. I will allow you to continue. However, interpretation is indicating that your speed of speech is a bit fast. So we'd like if you can slow it down a little bit.
Thank you very much for this remark. And yes, I will try to be more aware of this. So I continue. We believe participation is more than attending the sessions and voting. Participation is also about being involved, meeting others, building friendships, shaping your opinion, and finding new ideas through discussions and events that often happen when not in session. We deeply care about the benefits of meeting in person while at the conference. This is why we believe that allowing remote participation without conditions is a risk for full participation and fair representation of all member organizations. While we trust that the World Board will do their best to implement spaces to allow for discussions, we believe we need time to collectively address the complex issue of participation to find the right way to proceed. If approved, this amendment will give the World Board the leverage needed to allow remote participation under extraordinary circumstances, while encouraging us to address the topic of financial barriers and to understand the implications of remote participation better. We therefore encourage all MOs to support this amendment, and you are available to discuss it with any interested member organization openly. Thank you very much, and I give back.
I now open the floor to any member organization who wishes to make a comment or pose a question on this amendment. Or the motion. Please state your
Thank you everyone for your patience. As you note, there is a little bit of technical challenge there. So I would just repeat what Katarina just said. We are opening the floor for discussion by member organizations on this motion. And so at this time, I invite you again to put in the chat your name, member organization, and your language of speech so that we can acknowledge you for the discussion. I acknowledge New Zealand.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity to ask some questions. I would like some clarification on what would be considered exceptional circumstances, and particularly in relation to this, if a country experienced a natural disaster, such as an earthquake, and was unable to travel and participate at the conference, would that be considered exceptional circumstances? My other question is, in the wording of the amendment, it talks about may securely identify themselves. The language says may securely identify themselves. I'm interested to understand more why the specific wording has been included in the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. We will not be responding right away. Just a reminder to everyone, we will be taking all the questions and then responses will be given. I would like to invite Argentina to speak.
Hola, comparto la pregunta de Nueva Zelanda, de Fiona, acerca de qué va a considerarse circunstancias excepcionales en esta moción particularmente, porque muchos de nuestros países, y hablo particularmente del caso de Argentina, somos países donde, dadas las circunstancias de nuestros países, muchas veces atravesados por crisis económicas, dificultades logísticas, donde trasladarnos de un lugar a otro suele ser muy costoso, y adicionalmente siendo una organización completamente de base voluntaria, aquellas personas que participan de una conferencia deben generalmente solicitar días de vacaciones en sus trabajos para poder asistir a este tipo de eventos. Me parece muy importante conocer cuáles serían estas circunstancias y de qué manera se va a poder disponer de estas cláusulas excepcionales para poder fomentar a que todas las organizaciones miembros estemos en una condición de pie de igualdad y podamos ejercer nuestro derecho a voto durante todas las conferencias de aquí en adelante, más allá de las circunstancias que atraviesen nuestros países e inclusive nuestras organizaciones miembros.
Thank you, Argentina. I now invite Palestine.
أطلب أن لا يكون هذه الاستثناءات واردة على سبيل المثال. ما مدى إمكانية توافر هذه الاستثناءات على سبيل الحصر، ذكرها على سبيل الحصر، مثل ما قالوا ممثلين الدول السابقة أنه يجب أن يكون الأمثلة أو تكون الأمثلة الواردة هي على سبيل الحصر وليس على سبيل المثال، كي لا يتم استغلال هذا البند لمعرفة ما هي الظروف التي تعتبر وفق أحكام القانون هي ظروف استثنائية. شكراً.
Thank you, Palestine. I now invite Pakistan. I now invite Pakistan.
Thank you so much. I would just like to ask about the exceptional circumstances. Would not being able to get a visa be considered an exceptional circumstance?
Thank you for your question, Pakistan. Are there any other requests to speak? Thank you for this round of questions so far. I will invite a member of the board to respond.
Thank you for the question with respect to the definition of exceptional circumstances. It's always a challenge to try to define terms when you're dealing with terms like exceptional, because it will vary from time to time. And if this amendment were to go forward, then I think the board would need to be able to provide some guidance to the member organizations as to what exceptional circumstances might be. And that would be our proposal, is that, again, defining the term probably makes it too black and white because it is exceptional by nature, and those will always change and vary. But we would certainly be in a position to work with the MOs to be able to provide us with some support for how we would guide our decision and what those guidelines might look like.
Thank you, Tasha. I will now invite Anna, our CEO, to respond to one of the questions.
Thank you very much. It's a really important and smart question, but I'm going to speak with my legal advisor hat on at this point. It's very difficult to define exceptional circumstances because the precise nature of exceptional is that it is exceptional. What I would suggest is that the World Board could think about some ways to talk about that. So it could be international health emergencies or other emergencies of a like nature. And that could be read into the World Conference discussions on this motion, which would then necessarily affect the way in which the language is interpreted subsequently. it is too late at this stage to make any further changes to the constitutional amendments that have been proposed and the amendments to them. So the best way forwards is for us to think about some extra language that can be read into the session on this motion at the World Conference to deal with the concern of member organisations that exceptional circumstances may not be closely enough defined. Somebody can't hear. I'm sorry about that. Côte d'Ivoire. The other point that I think was raised, and if nobody has any further questions on the exceptional circumstances point and is happy with that approach, there was a question about unavailability of visas. There was the earlier point about financial difficulties. I think the point that was made about financial difficulties is a very good one, and we would certainly not wish for member organisations to be able to not be able to attend a world conference for financial reasons, and that is something that we always think about here quite carefully. On the question of visas, that would have to be a determination made exceptionally by the World Board. Ordinarily, when a member organisation is bidding to host a world conference, it would be expected that part of their bid will deal with the question of the capacity for all of our members to be able to obtain visas to come to the conference. So I think that point is already dealt with in that way. The last point I would like to make is that the point of having remote participation and only in exceptional circumstances is for this sort of worldwide disaster that we have all been living through for the last year and a half. We would not want to have a situation where some people can attend the World Conference and some people cannot. So I think we simply need to make sure that everybody has the financial means and can get the visas required to be able to participate in a personal way in the World Conference. It would also be extremely difficult practically to have some people at a physical World Conference and other people not there. There's always an additional feeling of exclusion for those who are not present. And in addition, the World Conference in a physical sense takes place over 8 or 9 hours. With time differences, it would be very difficult for member organisations to be able to be present for the whole of a 9-hour day. So in summary then, exceptional circumstances, we'll do some thinking about wording so we can read it into the meeting, and we would not be intending to have hybrid meetings. We all recognise the importance of the sharing and presence at a World Conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I believe I can invite Libya to respond to one of the questions.
Yes. شكرا لكم. طبعا زي ما تفضل الأخوات، إن هناك الظروف الاستثنائية دائما تختلف من وقت إلى وقت، ولا يمكن أن نحصرها في شيء معين. لذلك سوف يكون المجلس العالمي مهتم بما يطرأ في الجمعيات. نحن نهتم جدا بأن تكون جميع الجمعيات مشاركة معنا في المؤتمر العالمي، لذلك سيقوم المجلس العالمي بدراسة جميع الحالات التي تطرأ قبل فترة انعقاد المؤتمر، ونتمنى دائما أن جمعياتنا تكون مشاركة معنا. لذلك في هذا الوقت لا يمكن أن نتنبأ ما هي الاستثناءات التي قد تكون الآن. شكرا لكم.
Thank you, Libya. I would now like to invite Nicola to respond to one of the questions.
Thank you, Cindy-Ann. Yes, I wanted to just answer the question from New Zealand around the wording of may securely identify themselves in the proposed constitutional wording. So this is fairly standard wording used in these kind of provisions, but mainly very important is to show that kind of we know the head delegates in particular and can identify them, particularly when we come to the voting sessions. So it's to make sure that we have a way of securely identifying those who are playing a particular role in the conference and particularly in the voting aspects of the conference. But we have confidence in our platform that we've selected for the World Conference that we have mechanisms to be able to do that this time, which would then also be similar for future if needed.
Thank you, Nicola. We will now invite Norway to speak.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, good. On behalf of Norway, we think it's important not to corner ourselves by being too specific in the wording. This can make it difficult in the future if something happens that we haven't thought about yet. The pandemic, nobody thought about it before it happened, and this is why we are in this situation. Therefore, we believe it's crucial that the opportunity of remote voting are implemented. Norway think it's important that we give the World Board trust to run the organization in a good manner and are able to do good judgments in regards to physical and digital conferences in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway, for your comment. I just want to ask once more if there's any member organization wishing to speak. If you do wish to speak, please put your intention in the chat by indicating your name, your member organization, and your language. I will now invite France to speak.
Bonjour, je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez bien, j'espère, parce que j'ai pas une très bonne connexion. Du coup, moi, je voulais revenir sur le fait de ce qui a été dit là tout à l'heure sur les raisons financières. Nous, c'est des questions qu'on se pose au sein du scoutisme français, parce qu'on trouverait que ça serait vraiment dommage que cette motion, elle permette en fait, elle fasse en sorte qu'il y ait des personnes qui ne puissent pas participer pour des raisons financières et que cela, ça ne soit pas réfléchi. Et donc, nous, on est en train de voir comment ça serait possible de mener un travail sur ces questions-là pour savoir un petit peu, effectivement, est-ce qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui ne participent pas aux conférences mondiales pour des raisons financières et comment on pourrait combler ce problème-là, parce qu'on pense que ça ne devrait pas être une raison légitime pour ne pas participer à une conférence mondiale. Je ne sais pas s'il y a d'autres personnes qui se posent ces questions-là, mais voilà, non, ce n'est pas une question, c'est plutôt une remarque. Merci.
Thank you, France. Kuwait.
مرحبا مرة ثانية. أنا في بالي يعني المقترح جدا صائب، ولازم احنا ننفذه، لان هذا لان الجائحه عالميه، الجائحه مش لمنطقه او لدوله، هذه للعالم كله. هذه الظروف الاستثنائيه، وصح اذا كانت الجمعيه العامه او المجلس العالمي باتخاذ هذا القرار، لان قرار صائب. في المستقبل يمكن يحدث اكثر من كذي، يعني براكين زلازل في العالم كله، مش لدوله ولا لاقليم، للدول كلها. الجائحه عالميه والمقترح صائب، واحنا لازم نستعد للمستقبل. شنو يصير؟ احنا هنا بالعكس كنا متخوفين ان نسوي اي اجتماعات او مؤتمرات او حتى تدريبات على الاونلاين وعلى العالم اللي احنا قاعدين نعيش فيه، لكن لما جربنا لقينا وايد اسهل، وايد اخف، وحتى على الجمعيه اقل مصاريف للدول او للجمعيه العالميه او المجلس العالمي عامه. فاللي انا اشوفه المقترح صائب جدا وينفع الجميع، حتى يكون في الحالات الاستثنائيه طوارئ المستقبل. شكرا لك.
Thank you, Kuwait. I will now invite Cambodia.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. A very short question. In the case like Myanmar, they cannot participate the conference because of what happened to their country. So, do we consider that as like emergency too? That's something that nobody can foresee ahead of time. Different from pandemic, they cannot join because of what happened to the country. Just a short question about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cambodia. So I'll now like to invite Bron to respond to one of the questions.
So I'd like to answer the question about cost saving and financial barriers. This motion is not put forward as a cost saving proposal. WAGS is still covering the cost of the platform, the translation of documents and interpretation of the meetings at this upcoming World Conference, but also is committed to looking at the barriers of attending World Conferences when they take place in person, and looking at how we can ensure that all member organisations are able to attend. It's not the World Board intention to change the approach to World Conferences, and we recognise the value and the unique occasion that World Conferences present to WAGs and member organisations to meet in person. But this motion has been proposed to ensure we have the tools to respond to situations like we're encountering right now. It's also important that we think about that these are two separate things here. We have got this current provision in the Constitution that we'd like to see to manage situations like we're experiencing right now, exceptional circumstances. And there is a bigger conversation to be had around future World Conferences and the barriers that might be there. But that conversation should happen separately from passing this motion, which is around exceptional circumstances. In terms of the question around Myanmar, at the moment, this motion is looking at wider than individual country circumstances, but we would look at specific circumstances like this and see whether that would be allowed in the case of an exceptional circumstance.
Thank you, Bron. I will now invite Jordan to comment. Jordan?
مرحبا. أنا مع التأييد مع المقترح، بأيد المقترح لأنه المقترح بيعطي فرصة للجميع إنه يكون مشارك وله صوت وله دور. بس بدنا نأكد على كمان نضيف كلمة حسب الظروف، نركز على كلمة الطارئة، حسب عند الاستثناءات نكتب كمان الظروف الطارئة. شكرا.
Thank you for your contribution, Jordan. At this time, I would like to thank everyone for your contribution to this discussion and bring the discussion on this motion to a close.
Sorry, Cindy Ann, there is one more question from Palestine.
Oh, great. Thank you for catching it. Palestine. Palestine, I now invite you to speak. Okay. So thank you to everyone. At this time, I will bring the motion to a close, the discussion on the motion to a close, and invite Tasha to present the proposed motion 9, which speaks to World Board member term of office and election cycles.
Thank you, Cindy Ann. This motion proposes to add a provision to the Constitution to make it clear what happens to the term of office of World Board members and regional chairs in the event that a World Conference or regional conference cannot be held in the normal triennial cycle. It is co-sponsored by the World Board, Girl Scouts of the USA, and the Fédération du Scoutisme Français. The question became relevant due to the global pandemic. As it was impossible to hold the World Conference in 2020, 6 World Board members had to step down at the end of their term of office. It was not possible for them to remain in office until the next World Conference because the Constitution did not provide for that. We propose this motion to deal with the very rare situation where it becomes impossible to hold a World Conference. In these circumstances, the change to the Constitution enables elected trustees and regional chairs to remain in office until such time as elections can be held.
Thank you, Tasha. At this point, I would like to invite a representative from one of the co-sponsors of this motion to add any comments on this motion. So anyone from USA or France?
Yes, hello, this is Ajwa from Girl Scouts of the USA. Thank you so much for presenting this motion. We just, considering the abrupt shift in the World Board that happened at the end of last year due to the pandemic, we wanted to ensure that WAGs and the World Board had the proper methods in place to protect from that happening again and impacting the capacity as well or impossible function of our organization in circumstances like this that may arise in the future. So just planning and making sure it doesn't occur again. We feel that this is the best way to ensure that. Thanks.
Thank you, USA. Thank you, USA. At this point, I would like to invite UK, if you would like to speak about your proposed amendment to this motion.
Thank you very much, Cindy Ann. My name's Jess Bond. I'm representing Charlotte Makanga, our International Commissioner, and Amanda Medler, the Chief Guide from the UK. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. It's been a really interesting meeting so far and great to hear from so many MOs about the proposed motions and amendments. Girl Guiding UK is proposing a small amendment to the wording of proposed motion 9, which we do support to ensure the continuity of leadership in the exceptional circumstances such as those we have faced in the last year. With thanks to the procedural team for their support, we are proposing to add in a sentence to ensure that no World Board or regional committee member is forced to remain in office should exceptional circumstances occur. We believe this is important if their personal circumstances or other commitments mean that it would be hard for them to continue to play an active role as a member of the board or the committee if they were to serve for longer than their original mandate. Whilst we sincerely hope such circumstances, as Tasha said, would be very rare, we do feel it is important for the volunteers who are trustees, if they are a member of the World Board, and who all have significant responsibilities, to have the option to reaffirm their willingness to continue for longer than originally expected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jess, for your intervention. I would like now open the floor to any member organization who wishes to pose a question or make a statement. Please write your name and member organization in the chat. I see already Fiona from New Zealand asked to speak in English. Fiona, over to you.
Thank you. Hi again, everyone. Fiona Bradley from Girl Guiding New Zealand. I am interested to understand why a specific time period was not included in the motion and what safeguards would be put in place to ensure the World Board does not delay unnecessarily the decision to hold the elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona, for your question. Do we have any more questions? Please state your name and a member organization in the chat.
We invite Norway to speak.
Thank you. We just have a question. From our understanding, it is possible for trustees to retire from their posts if necessary. So then we are wondering if the amendment is necessary or if that is covered by the possibility to retire. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway.
Cindy, and I'm happy to respond to that comment with respect to the option to step down. Yes, the option is already exists in the Constitution for a board member to step down and resign if they wish to do so. So if our motion is passed, the expectation is that they would stay on, but could step down if need be.
Thank you, Tasha. The discussion on this motion is still open, so I'd just like to invite persons with questions, comments, to indicate in the chat by requesting to speak using their name, member organization, and language.
Cindy Ann, perhaps I can respond to the question from New Zealand and the one that Malawi wanted to propose as well. The Constitution does state, it was a good question. Thank you very much for posing it. The Constitution does state that we have to have a World Conference every 3 years. So certainly there would be the expectation that this would occur. However, we do acknowledge that particularly for this year, we had to defer because of the pandemic. So the idea would be is that constitutionally, we would still expect a conference to happen every 3 years. So it would be unlikely that we would have to extend the terms beyond a reasonable period of time, such as what we experienced this year.
Thank you, Tasha, for the response. I will allow another minute. If anyone has question or comment that you'd like to add, please do so by indicating a request to speak in the chat.
Do we have any further? Jan, please state your name and member organization.
We have a request to speak. Malaysia, you're invited to speak.
Thank you. Just need some clarification regarding the World Board member term of office and the regional chair. What happens to the regional committee? Say, for example, that we don't have the regional conference next year and there's no elections. So the chair remains. What happened to the committee members of the regions? Thank you.
Thank you, Malaysia. I now invite Jordan to speak. Jordan.
مرحبا، بس عندي استفسار بسيط ممكن اني اقترح بس السؤال يعني. هلا طرقته لانه الخيار للتقاعد او للاستقاله او التقاعد طبعا انه بأريحية ممكن اي حد مثلا خيار موفق لهم او بأريحية ممكن يقدم، بس باعتقادي انه التغيير المستمر مثلا في الموظفات يعني هذا ما بيأثر على رئيسات الأقاليم والجمعيات الأعضاء. شكرا.
Thank you, Jordan. I now invite Nigeria to speak.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is that the World Conference was supposed to hold in 2020, and then after 3 years, it will hold. That would be it's supposed to now hold in 2023, but it's now holding in 2020, and it's holding in 2021. Does that mean it's going to hold in 2024, or it's still going to hold in 2023? And if elections are going to take place only in world conferences, what happens if we have like a similar situation like this, like the case of the coronavirus, where we could not hold the conference, and the world board and committees had to step down, resign, or all of those? Now I feel like it's I don't understand. I just don't get it. So I need some kind of clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Nigeria. Sri Lanka, I now invite you to speak.
Hi everyone, I'm Shamakya Fernando from Sri Lanka. It's also regarding how this motion is impacting, because if the number of members are reduced, and then should there be a case where the World Board needs to extend their timeline in a situation like what we experienced last year, should there be like a resignation or more within that existing members and we lose a certain skill set, then would the procedure be the same as in other case, or would it be different because it's an extension that we are talking about here? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri Lanka, for your question. So I'm now going to take a break from the questions and invite a few responses.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. As you know from our constitution, we're also obliged to hold every 3 years regional conferences. So this matter is not to be changed. It is quite clear. The circle of conferences will remain the same. So 2023 is going to be the next World Conference. We're not adapting the circle. We're keeping this and using 2022 as an exception that happened due to the circumstances. So we're not changing the cycle of region or world conferences, and there is a clear obligation in the constitution to hold. That's how we ended up having the general meeting, remember, back action to the law.
I think we have lost Katerina there. So I would just quickly invite Nicola to add any comments.
Yes, so just to reiterate, as I'm not sure everyone heard Katerina's response. So the intention is to keep the cycles as they would have been had we had World Conference last year. So to have regional conferences in 2022 and the next World Conference in 2023. We are looking at how regional conferences will take place next year. It's still our intention that they will happen. We do have a constitutional obligation on regional conferences to take place every 3 years as well. So obviously we would then be planning to do regional committee elections at those conferences. I wanted to pick up on a point which I think came from Nigeria, which was around being able to do elections outside of a World Conference situation. So obviously we've postponed the elections for this time to our World Conference in July, and we'll be doing that in a virtual World Conference situation. To do a election process outside of a World Conference where we have a live voting option would be quite difficult. So our only other option would be to do a written resolution process for the elections, which would involve a multi-stage process for our elections because of the need for all of the candidates to reach a simple majority in the election process. So we do have our election process set up to run at a World Conference, and that is kind of the way we're doing them this year. That links partly into motion 5 about kind of there is no set time limit on when we'd be putting in this motion, because we would hope that if the unlikely situation of a global pandemic would still be impacting future World Conferences, we would then be able to have a virtual one and hold our elections. So this is a very rare situation we're looking at with this proposed motion, but it's to help bring clarity to what would happen in the situation should it happen.
Thank you, Nicola. Any further questions, requests to speak? Please remember to indicate this in the chat. So we have one more response. I would like to invite a member of the board. Pasha, will that be you in this case?
Yes, I think, Chimanthea, if I understand, you made a comment about the process for reappointing somebody if there should be a vacancy on the board. As you know, we do have a process for doing that, and we always have alternate board members available at the time of the election. such that if a vacancy becomes open, we do have alternates that we can bring on who were elected and able to join the board if the need be.
Thank you, Tasha.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions about this motion number 9? Or are we ready to move?
We have Grenada wishing to speak and the UK wishing to speak. So I invite Grenada to speak.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm just getting clarity, seeking clarity on the fact that it's said that the conferences will remain, the following conferences will remain as scheduled in 2022 and 2023 respectively. And I'm wondering if it won't be unjust to the current members or the members being elected this conference in that they would not have a full term in office. That is my query. Thank you.
Thank you, Grenada. And now invite the UK.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the comments and the board's response to our proposed amendment, which I will share with our delegation. I just had one further point of clarification following on from the question from Sri Lanka and the response from the board. Would it be possible to clarify whether the process for appointing a member to the board in a casual vacancy and also the use of the approved persons would also be possible if we were in this situation where we needed to extend beyond the original mandate, or only possible within the original mandate to which the World Board member was elected? I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. At this time, I would invite responses from the board. Okay, so these questions, I ask Nicola.
Yep, thank you, Cindy Ann. So to respond to both questions, the first point I think was around the term of office of those who are elected this year, given that we are proposing keeping the cycles of conferences the same. Those elected at the World Conference in July will serve a 5-year term uniquely to take them up to 2026 to keep the cycle. I think everyone will appreciate this has been an exceptional year. We hadn't anticipated having to postpone World Conference by a year, but this was discussed and it was felt to be the best way forward to retain the cycles of conferences as we have them now and to have a shorter term for those who are elected at World Conference in July. In response to the question about, I think the question is whether this extension up until the next elections are able to take place, whether that would also apply to the approved persons. So would they be able to fill in a vacancy should any member of the board step down at that point. Yes, I think that would be the way forward. We would go through the approved persons to fill those casual vacancies in the first place. But then we may find that we have further vacancies depending how many people wish to step down at that point. But the first point of call would be the approved persons.
Thank you, Nicola. So I just want to thank everyone for
Until we're ready to move on to the next motion. I see no further questions.
Go ahead.
If we have no further questions, I think we can continue with the next. Thank you, Diana, with the next motion on clarifying wording and removing inconsistencies. Livia, over to you.
شكرا. هذا المقترح يطرح هذا المقترح بعض التغيرات التحريرية الطفيفة في الدستور واللوائح لزيادة الوضوح وإزالة أي تناقضات. هناك 14 تغييرا في هذا النوع منصوص عليها بالكامل في وثيقة الاقتراحات. من أمثلة ذلك تحديث الدستور للتعرف على اسم كوسافري جنبا إلى جنب مع المراكز العالمية الأخرى. إزالة اللغة الانتقالية المدرجة في الدستور عند اعتماده في سنة 2014 وتوضيح الصياغة والتعريف. نوصي بهذا الاقتراح الدستوري لكم.
Thank you, Livia. I now invite member organizations and participants to request to speak on this motion and open the discussion on the motion. Again, just a reminder to request to speak, you would put in the chat your name, your member organization, and your language. So I note that we have no requests to speak in the chat. So I'm just going to make one more call, after which we will move on to the next motion. So this is one more call. If you have you would like to request to speak, enter your name, your member organization, and your language. Okay, thank you. I would now invite Libya again to present the next motion. This motion speaks to the implementation of motions passed at the 37th. It's okay.
شكرا سنديان. المقترح رقم 10. هذا المقترح يطرح تخويل المجلس العالمي لإجراء تغييرات طفيفة على الدستور واللوائح الداخلية كما هو مطلوب لتنفيذ القرارات التي اتخذتها المنظمات الأعضاء في المؤتمر العالمي 37. قد تكون أنواع التغييرات نحوية، تنسيقية أو ترقيم، وغيرها من الأخطاء غير جوهرية لضمان سلامة الدستور والقوانين. نوصي بهذا الاقتراح الدستوري لكم.
Thank you, Libya. I will now open for discussion. We have a request to speak from Palestine. Palestine, you may speak.
مساء الخير للجميع. بخصوص المقترح رقم 10، لماذا لا يكون ومن المفترض أن يكون أن المقترح معد بنص واضح وصريح، لا يوجد فيه أخطاء نحوية، لا يحتاج إلى تعديل، سواء كانت هذه التعديلات طفيفة أو تعديلات نحوية أو تعديلات لها خاص يعني لها طابع التنسيق أو غيره. يعني يفترض أن نصوت على مقترح واضح منسق لا يوجد به أخطاء نحوية ولا يفترض التأويل. شكرا لكم جميعا.
Thank you, Palestine. Lebanon requests to speak, followed by Norway. So Lebanon, I invite you to speak.
في حال صارت هالتغييرات يلي هي حتكون تغييرات بالشكليات وليس بالمضمون، هل سترجع تنعرض على الدول للاطلاع عليها مش للموافقة، للاطلاع والأخذ بها؟ شكرا.
Thank you, Lebanon. Norway, you may speak.
Thank you. I would just remind would remind the World Conference that in the 36th World Conference, we did make a constitutional change to the bylaws that would make the vice chairs to have a vote, which is not liable to charity law. So for the World Board to have the possibility to amend or make the wording right with the help from their lawyers is a positive thing for us to enable them to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Noe. As we allow others to think on whether you would like to request to speak, I will now invite Libya to respond to the questions we've received so far.
شكرا ساندي. بالنسبة بما سؤال فلسطين بخصوص لماذا هناك بعض التغيرات أو الأشياء التي قد تحدث، لماذا لم تكن هذا من الأول؟ طبعا زي ما معروف عند تنفيذ القرارات سيكون هناك بعد الترقيم كذلك التنسيق، فهذا يحدث دائما عندما يتم أي شيء يعني في هذا الدستور أو في هذه اللوائح، وهي تغيرات طفيفة جدا. السؤال الآخر من لبنان بخصوص إذ لم تكن التغيرات طفيفة جدا، إذا كانت التغيرات جوهرية. إذا كانت التغيرات جوهرية أكيد سوف يتم الرجوع إلى الجمعيات بهذا الخصوص. Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you, Libya. I will now make one more call on this motion. I will now invite Lebanon to speak.
شكرا. نحن موافقين على المقترح، بس في حال صار هالتغيير يلي هو منه بالمضمون، نحن مش عم نحكي بالمضمون لأنه ما في يتغير بالمضمون. إذا صار هالتغيير بالشكليات وبالصياغة، هل سيعرض على البلاد للأخذ به؟ مش ضروري للموافقة، للأخذ به. بالمضمون أكيد مش حيرجع، ما حيتغير المضمون. بالشكليات هل سيعرض على البلاد بعد ما يخلص ويتم تنقيحه وتظبيط الصياغة تبعيته؟ شكرا.
Thank you, Lebanon. I will now invite Nicola.
Thank you, Cindy-Ann. I just wanted to add on what I think Libya had mentioned earlier. Once we've passed the motions at World Conference or know which motions have been passed, we'll be working through the record of decisions that is obviously circulated to all member organisations, but we also have to send that to the Charity Commission so that they can see the decisions that you have taken. Alongside the record of decisions, we will have the final version of the Constitution that will show the changes that have been made, and that again will be circulated to all member organisations, so you will have transparency of what has been changed in response to the motions that have been passed, and a copy of that will also go to the Charity Commission so they can also see against the record of decisions that the appropriate changes have been made. So both member organisations and the Charity Commission will have the final version of the Constitution alongside the record of decisions.
Thank you, Nicola. So we have no more requests to speak on this motion. I just want to again thank everyone for your contributions and bring the discussion on this proposed motion to a close. I also want to acknowledge a request to speak from GSUSA on the motion before, proposed motion 9.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to go back to motion 9. I just wanted to respond to some of the questions about alternates and whether or not we would be able to have them continue on. Alternates also within the bylaws, I believe, do not also have their terms end within the term, and so they do not resolve the issue. We, in order to ensure that in extraordinary circumstances, such as this year, come again, and we are allowed to continue on with leadership, this particular motion and the proposed amendment would still need to stand in order to resolve that. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Thank you.
Thank you, USA. So we have had a discussion on each of the motions slated for discussion today. If we have no more comments, I would just really like to say thank you to everyone for your contributions during both parts of this session. You will have additional time between now and World Conference Week to think about the motion further, each of the ones we talked about today. And if you have any further questions or comments on them, feel free to contact the World Board member who presented the motion, or in general, email askyourboard@wags.org. And as you can see on the screen, the email is listed there, askyourboard@wags.org. I also want to take the opportunity to invite everyone to the next discussion that we'll be having. And that discussion will be next Sunday, the 27th of June, at the same time, 11 a.m. UTC. So you do the necessary conversions. This will be an opportunity to discuss proposed motions that were put forward by member organizations, excluding the motion 32 motions. So Sunday, just to repeat, Sunday, 27th June, 11 a.m. UTC, so the same time that we started today, will be an opportunity for us to discuss the proposed motions put forward by member organizations. And as I said, that it excludes motion 32. So motion 32 will be discussed at a third session. And that session will be Sunday, 4th of July. And you will notice a slight time change for that one. So motion 32, proposed motions will be discussed Sunday, the 4th of July at 12 noon UTC. So those are the upcoming sessions. We really hope that you can make it and that you can participate as well as you did today. We are really grateful that you joined and that you were so eager to discuss and get clarification on the motions presented. Thank you very much, everyone.